Welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, welcome. My name's Greg. If you haven't made your own lox, you're missing out on something really good, like probably the best bagel you've ever had. Today I'm going to show you how I made my own lox out of wild salmon. So good. To make lox, we're going to need salmon. I have chinook salmon, otherwise known as king. It's the largest of the salmon. Got coho salmon, often referred to as silvers, and I got some sockeye salmon. I love the salmon, not just to eat, but just as a fish. They're amazing. These creatures spend most of their life in the ocean, and then when they're ready to spawn, they somehow find their way back to the small creeks and streams that they were born in to spawn and continue the cycle. The chinook and the coho, these were caught in the small creeks and streams nearby. Sockeye mostly comes from Alaska, so far as I know. I know we don't have them here. And you'll notice this still has a thin belly on it. Off these have been filleted. I've painstakingly took out, looks like I missed one. Painstakingly removed all these pin bones, which is a really annoying process. But I will remove the belly because we want these to be more or less uniform. Yeah, it's a little thinner here than here, obviously, but the belly is just too thin. And I've also removed the tails because the tails are just too thin. They're not going to cure at the same rate as the bigger part of the fillet. So let me remove this. I'll be back, show you my next step that I do. So to start, I just like to score the skin a little bit. It's going to help the salt penetrate into that side. Don't really want to get too far into the meat, just a little through the skin. And then I'm going to cut it into sections. Size lox pieces I want. I'll probably cut these in half. It's going to be a big chunk of lox. That's alright. No problem with that here. Yeah, that's a big piece of lox. You can see it into the... When I remove these pin bones, I kind of open that up a lot. That's unfortunate. Alright, there's my pieces of chinook. Let's take a look at how bright that skin is. You can see why they call these silvers. And the skin is not nearly as tough as the chinook skin. Cats are going crazy about this. Smells good to them. I'm going to cut these two bigger ones in half. Just look at that meat. Look at that salmon. It's just beautiful. Can't really get much fresher. Those fish were swimming in the creek yesterday. You can see this is a pretty bright, but it's not quite as bright. It's not as bright as that silver. And this one here is the sockeye. Those other ones were in the creek yesterday. This got caught out of my local Costco 2 days ago because I wanted to make this lox video before I knew I was going to have fresh salmon out of the creek. Next step in this lox making journey is to make a dry brine. It's going to take salt and sugar, and quite a lot of it because I have a lot of fish. However much fish you have, you're going to want to be able to completely submerge your fish. I'm making equal parts by weight. I'm going to be using a combination of just plain white cane sugar and some brown sugar, but you can use either one. It doesn't need to be a mix. That's just how I'm doing it. Oops. That was a little bit too much. It'll be all right. Let's add a little more salt to make it the right balance. Make sure I break up these chunks of the brown sugar. Just get this all very well mixed together. Let me go get my container and my fish. I'll be right back. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to put a pretty healthy coating, healthy layer of this on the bottom, like at least 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch. Make sure the whole bottom is covered. Put my sockeye on the one side. Okay, now I'm going skin side down. I'll go with my chinook here. See, these big pieces will fit nicely in there. And you want a container that's going to fit these relatively well. fill up most of the space so there's not a lot of empty space. Now I'm going to cover that. Make sure you get the edges filled in. No voids. You don't want to leave any voids. You want the whole thing completely encased in this dry brine. All right, now this layer, I'm going to go skin side up. The last layer was skin side down. This layer is going to be skin side up. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing. So I just want to cover that, make sure I fill all the voids. Now one reason that I love to make locks myself is, well, one, it's just better. But, you know, most of the time when you find locks for sale, at least for me, most of the time I find it for sale, it's almost always Atlantic salmon, which is pretty much all farmed. One thing I learned up in Alaska, they're pretty big on this saying of, friends don't let friends eat farmed salmon. So I'm not a real big fan of the farmed salmon. And you can see I didn't make quite enough cure. Thought I'd have enough, but it wasn't quite enough. Hey, don't even think about it, dog. It's not for you. So the last ones are going to be skin side down again. And you can just keep stacking these as much as you need to fit in whatever container you have. I'm going to make a little more brine, enough to cover that up. Be right back. Now, if you just have a couple of fillets, you could just wrap it up in saran wrap. I've seen people do that. Some people put a weight on this. Certainly for gravlax, which is a similar but different version, they usually put a weight on it. And you know, if you want to put in some lemon zest or some fresh dill in between your layers, that would be a really nice touch. I'm just going basic here. But I think this lid, if I can get it to close, is going to put just a little bit of pressure on that. Yep, it's going to put a little pressure. It's kind of the same as having some weight. It's optional. You don't need weight, but it doesn't hurt. But yeah, this is going to squeeze out a whole lot of liquid. You know, I'm hoping these, I don't think that's going to cause a problem. It would be better probably to have salt, sugar packed in there, but all the salty liquid's going to get in there. I'm pretty sure that's going to be fine. We'll find out. I sure hope so. It's a lot of salmon. I'm going to stick that in my refrigerator for 24 hours. My lox has been in the refrigerator for 24 hours. I don't know if you can see, but there's like no salt left really. There's a little left on the bottom, but it's almost all liquid. See how it's all turned to liquid there? You can see it's very rigid. When this was fresh, that would be flopping down. That would be flopping. This is very firm. So what I'm going to do at this point, I'm going to go rinse this off at the sink. I'm going to make up another brine. What I have for my brine here is 5,000 grams of water. And to that, I'm going to add 500 grams of salt. If you have Morton's salt, it's going to look like about that much. Because like I've said before, diamond crystal by volume takes up more volume for the same weight. It's not really a 10% solution. This is 5,500 grams total now that I added my salt. So 10% would be 550 grams of salt. But it's close. It's basically 10 parts water, 1 part salt. A fun fact is the amount of salt that can be dissolved in water depends on how hot the water is or how cold it is. But at room temperature, you can dissolve about 26%. I don't know if you can really see, but it's actually dissolved. The water is looking really clear right now. The water is pretty much almost just about as clear as it was when I added the salt. Don't really have room at the sink for my camera right now, but I'm going to take this over there. I'm going to rinse off all that salt from my fish and put it in here. Show you what it looks like in a minute. If you can see, it's not only really firm right now, but it's gotten quite a bit darker as well. And I don't know if you can hear it. You know, it's very rigid. So anyway, into the salt water. This is how much liquid was pulled out of that salmon. So that's quite a bit of weight. You wonder why lox is so expensive. Salmon's expensive to start with. And then it's got all that weight of water that you pull out. Plus it uses a lot of salt. Imagine how much it would cost if it wasn't mostly Atlantic salmon they use. Because that's all farmed and it's much cheaper than most of your wild salmon. Oh, how red that is. It's beautiful. the coho, the silver, is much redder, much more red than the Chinook salmon, which has gotten darker in color, but it's much more orange. The Chinook king salmon, much more orange of a meat, where that coho and the sockeye too is a little more red. So this wants to float because it's very salty water, and this salmon has lost quite a bit of weight. So what I'm going to do to keep it under there is just add a plate, and that should keep it below the level. Yep, that's going to keep it all in the brine. So what I'm going to do now, stick that in the fridge for 12 to 18 hours. I'll probably just take a real thin sliver to taste it and see. See you in 12 to 18 hours. These have been soaking for about 18 hours now, and you can see they've softened up a bit. So what I'm going to do now, we'll hold up a sec. So now these need to be rinsed out because they'll be way too salty. We already eat them right now. Oh, I missed a few pin bones here. Jeez, I spent so much time doing that too. But once the brine starts getting in there, the meat starts shrinking back and these bones, they start sticking out a little. Look how fat that piece is. That is a nice piece. So how long these soak, it's a bit of a judgment call. It's not always the same. A lot of it does depend on how fat the fillets are, how salty it is, because the thinner pieces get saltier and they also rinse out quicker. But I'm probably going to leave this in here for a couple hours. I'll check it in an hour, but I probably am guessing 2 hours, and I have left them in there like as much as 5 hours. But the real deal is, if you don't do it long enough, the lox is very, very salty. If you do it too long, the texture gets kind of mushy. So it's a little bit of a balancing act. I think it's better to remove them a little too soon than leave them too long. But ideally, if I check it often enough, I can catch it at the right time and move on to the next step. So what I want to do here, I think you can see this, is I just have a slight trickle, so it's just slowly draining. And I just want to leave it alone like that for the next hour or two, or however long this takes. And like I said, it varies time to time. It depends how fat the fillets are, how salty they end up being here. Frankly, how big your water container is compared to the size. A lot of times if I'm doing one fillet, I'll do it in just a bowl. So anyway, I'm going to check this in an hour. And by check it, I'll feel how it feels. And I'll probably take a real thin slice because this is edible now. It's probably really, really salty, but it is edible. 2 hours of rinsing in the bucket with the water running through them. I tasted one of these and I think it's good to go. Not too salty, not too soft. What I'm doing now is I'm just going to brush on, what I have here is peach syrup that I had from last time I canned peaches. Maple syrup works really good. You could use honey, you could use a simple syrup. And honestly, you don't really need to put syrup on them. I just like the touch it gives it, and it gives it a nice sticky pellicle for the smoke to stick to. If you're just doing 1 or 2 fillets, you could easily try these out in the refrigerator. But I don't have room for this much fish in my refrigerator. So I'm going to leave them out in front of a fan, which will go right here as soon as I'm done recording. And these will probably be out here probably somewhere between 12 and 24 hours. It's really a touch thing when it's the texture I want, but they need to firm up a little, dry out a little, and develop a nice tacky layer on the outside. So I'll brush these probably every hour for the next 5 or 6 hours, and I'll see you when I'm ready for the next step. I've had my salmon out for about 24 hours. It's been out on the table. Got it on these racks. Towel underneath to keep the drips off my table. Not sure if my lighting is going to be good enough for you to really see the difference here. This is the coho salmon. You can see it's nice, like bright red almost. This is the sockeye from Costco. Of course, these are this is out of our local rivers here. And you can see over here this Chinook salmon. It's just a little more orange colored than the coho or the sockeye. And this again is out of our local river system here in Western Oregon. So yeah, this has been out in front of this fan for 24 hours. It's quite a bit more tacky. It's firmed up a bit. I think this is ready for the cold smoker. Got this loaded onto my cold smoker. Trick is to make sure that you have space in between each piece. Nothing's touching, that way smoke can get around everything. And how long you leave this on a cold smoker is completely subjective. This is all ready to eat right now. So you could go like a half hour if you just want a little kiss of smoke. 4, 5, 6 hours if you want a little heavier smoke. I'm probably going to go about 4 or 5 hours. So yeah, I'll bring you back then. And I use this smoke generator powered by this aquarium pump. You've seen it before if you've seen my videos. And just stick the intake tube through the intake here of my bigger smoker, and that's my setup. See, it's a nasty day out. Hopefully it doesn't rain too much. Well, it's raining hard out. I'm not sure if there's a way to keep that off this video. I'll find out. Got my sockeye salmon, my coho silver salmon, and my chinook king salmon. King salmon is much more orange colored. These two look a little more similar, but I think it's about time to taste these. Had them on the cold smoker for about 5 hours. I smoked with mostly alder. I used a little bit of applewood because I was running low on the alder chips. I wouldn't recommend a hickory or a mesquite or a heavy type smoke. I'd stay with alder or fruit wood, something kind of lighter. We want to cut these moving towards the tail. You can kind of tell by the grain which way the grain goes. And some people just cut it this way, just straight down. But what you really want to do is cut it like this. Cross it. Oh, yeah. That's looking pretty nice to me. And that way we get nice pieces. Pieces like that. So there's the sockeye. I don't know if you can see from there how it's almost translucent. Oh yeah. See the blade moving through there. There's the coho, or the silver. There's the chinook, otherwise known as king salmon. Well, let's give them the taste test before I make a bagel. Give them a taste on their own. I'm going to start with the sockeye. I don't know if you can tell from there how translucent this looks. Maybe if I get like a light, change my lighting a little, you'll be able to see how translucent that looks. It's really good. Salty, a little sweet, tastes like salmon locks. Let's give the coho a try. It's also pretty translucent. If I get the light behind it, you can see the translucency better. Tastes better. I don't know how to say it, but it's like, it just tastes fresher than the sockeye. And probably because it came out of the river like the day before I started making it. Don't know how long it takes to get to Costco and then get to me. But the sockeye, it's good. Tastes great. Tastes better than locks you buy at the store. But it doesn't taste as fresh as that last one. All right, well, let's get a taste of the chinook, the king salmon. I think again, if I get a light behind it, you can see the translucency better. Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure this is going to be my favorite. Well, that's really good. To be honest, trying to do all these different sizes and thicknesses of fillets at the same time, really not the best idea. I think this king one, the chinook, could have probably brined a little longer. I mean, it's salty, it's sweet. I think the coho, that one's perfect in this batch. But that's just my take on it. And I'm going to make up a bagel. Cream cheese on a toasted bagel. Toasted everything bagel. Gonna load that up with some lox. Piece of thinly sliced tomato or two. A little bit of red onion. Top that off with just a few capers. And that is a bagel. If you like this video, give it a big old thumbs up. If you like my content, consider subscribing to my channel. Put some love into the food you make. Peace.